Have you ever opened your fridge, grabbed a familiar food, maybe some leftover rice or a package of deli meat, and just assumed it was perfectly safe to eat? For most of our lives, we've trusted that cold box in our kitchen to be a guardian of our health. It's a belief we all share, isn't it? That if it's cold, it's safe. But what if I told you that this simple act of trust might be unintentionally exposing you to serious health risks? As a family doctor with over 30 years of experience caring for folks just like you, I've seen a quiet truth that many people find hard to believe. For those of us over 60, our refrigerator can sometimes become a breeding ground for invisible dangers. I'm not talking about textbook theories. I'm talking about real people. I'll never forget my patient, Arthur, a 72-year-old retired mechanic and a proud widower who valued his independence. He came into my office with persistent stomach problems that no one could pinpoint. It wasn't until we sat down and talked about his day-to-day habits, specifically how he'd make a single package of smoked sausage last for nearly a month to save a few dollars, that we discovered the culprit. The danger was hiding in plain sight, right inside his own trusted refrigerator. The truth is, there are 5 common foods that many of us keep in our fridge that can become harmful over time, and most people are completely unaware of the risk. In this video, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to arm you with knowledge. We're going to break down each of these 5 foods, one by one. I'll explain the simple science in a way that makes sense, and I will give you the practical, easy steps to protect yourself and your family. And please, make sure you stay with me until the very end. Because the 5th food I'll reveal is one that many of us believe is preserved safely for months, even years. But I've seen how, under the right conditions, it can begin to produce a known carcinogen right inside the jar. The information in that final section is something I believe every single person in our age group needs to hear. Before we dive in, I'm genuinely curious about how many of us share this experience. If the problem I just described sounds familiar to you, if you've ever held that simple belief that cold equals safe, please take a moment to comment a simple yes below. It helps me understand what you're going through, and it shows others in our community that they are not alone. Okay, let's uncover the first hidden danger. Alright, let's get right to it. The first food we need to talk about is close to many of our hearts, a staple of countless family breakfasts and holiday dinners: smoked and processed meats. I'm talking about that beautiful spiral-cut ham on the Easter table, the crispy bacon sizzling in the pan on a Sunday morning, or those savory sausages you might enjoy with your eggs. These foods are more than just meals. They are woven into the fabric of our memories. They represent comfort, tradition, and happy times with loved ones. But as your doctor, I need to tell you that as comforting as these foods are, they carry a hidden risk that grows silently over time, right inside your refrigerator. Now, let's talk about what's really going on here, doctor to patient. The problem isn't the meat itself, but the preservatives that give it that long shelf life and that appealing pinkish color we all recognize. These are called nitrates and nitrites. In my practice, I often tell my patients to think of these preservatives as tiny, invisible time bombs. When you buy the package sealed, they're stable. But the moment you break that seal and open it up, the clock starts ticking. Every time you open the package, you expose the meat to air and moisture. This, combined with the cool, damp environment of your fridge, can trigger a slow chemical reaction. Over days and weeks, those harmless-seeming nitrates can transform into dangerous compounds called nitrosamines. That's a scientific-sounding word, but what it means for your health is very simple and very serious. Nitrosamines are recognized by health organizations worldwide as potent carcinogens, meaning they are strongly linked to an increased risk of cancers, especially in our digestive system: the stomach, the colon, and the esophagus. As we get older, our body's natural repair systems, the little crews that fix cellular damage, aren't quite as zippy as they were in our 30s or 40s. This means the damage from compounds like nitrosamines can add up faster, putting us at a greater risk. The truly scary part? You can't see, smell, or taste them. The ham might still look perfect, the bacon might smell delicious, but these invisible chemical changes are happening silently. This brings me back to my patient, Arthur, the 72-year-old retired mechanic I mentioned earlier. Arthur was a wonderful man, fiercely independent and living on a fixed income after his wife passed. To make his grocery budget stretch, he'd buy one of those large, family-sized packs of smoked sausage. It was practical. He'd open it, take a couple of links for his dinner, and then put the rest back in the fridge, usually just in the flimsy plastic it came in. That same package would often sit there for 3, sometimes even 4 weeks, as he slowly used it up. He was, without knowing it, conducting a perfect science experiment for creating nitrosamines. He wasn't sick because he was unclean or careless. He was sick because of this simple, common gap in knowledge. When we finally connected the dots between his persistent stomach pain and his long-stored sausage routine, it was a true light bulb moment for both of us. He thought he was being frugal and responsible, but the potential cost to his health was immense. But here is the good news, and it's the same thing I told Arthur. You do not have to give up these foods entirely. The goal here isn't to live in fear, it's to live with wisdom. You can absolutely still enjoy the flavors you love by simply adopting a few smart, easy habits. First, buy in smaller quantities. Instead of the giant, family pack of bacon or sausage, opt for the smaller, 8-ounce packages. The simple logic is that you're more likely to use it all up within a few days, well before that invisible clock runs out. Second, if you do buy in bulk to save money, make the freezer your best friend. Take 5 minutes right when you get home from the grocery store to divide the meat into smaller, meal-sized portions. Wrap them tightly in plastic wrap or aluminum foil, place them in a freezer-safe bag, and pop them straight into the freezer. They will keep safely for months, and you can simply thaw a small portion in the fridge the night before you need it. And third, the most important rule of all, the 3 to 5 day rule. Once a package of any smoked or processed meat is opened, whether it's deli ham, bacon, or sausages, you have 3 to 5 days to use it. That's the window of maximum safety. A fantastic tip I give all my patients is to keep a permanent marker in a kitchen drawer. The moment you open a package, write that day's date directly on it. It takes away all the guesswork. These are small, simple changes. They cost nothing and take only a few minutes, but they have a powerful, protective impact on your long-term health. They empower you to stay in control, allowing you to savor the foods that bring you joy, but without the hidden worry. Alright, moving on to number 2. This one might honestly shock you, because it's a food we consider to be one of the most humble, safe, and reliable staples in our kitchens. Leftover cooked rice. I know what you might be thinking. Rice. It's affordable, it's versatile, and it's been a comforting part of family meals for generations. How could something so simple possibly pose a danger? Well, the truth lies in a microscopic organism that is far more resilient than the rice itself, and it's something I've seen cause serious trouble more times than I can count. Let's break this down, because the science is quite fascinating and very important. Uncooked rice, straight from the bag, naturally contains the dormant spores of a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. Think of these spores as tiny, armored seeds that the bacteria create to protect themselves. They are incredibly tough. When you cook the rice, the boiling water kills the active bacteria, but it often isn't hot enough for long enough to destroy these hardy, heat-resistant spores. They survive the cooking process completely unharmed. Here is where the danger begins. If that cooked rice is left to sit out on the stovetop or the counter to cool down slowly, it enters what we in the medical community call the danger zone, that temperature range between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. In this lukewarm environment, those surviving spores can germinate. They wake up and begin to multiply into active bacteria again. As they multiply, they produce a potent toxin. And here is the critical piece of information that most people don't know. Reheating the rice might kill the new bacteria, but it does not destroy the heat-stable toxin that has already been produced. Once that toxin is in the rice, it's there to stay, and no amount of microwaving or frying will get rid of it. For us seniors, with digestive systems that may be a little less resilient than they were in our younger years, this toxin can lead to a very nasty and debilitating bout of food poisoning, which can be much harder for our bodies to recover from. This isn't just a textbook warning. I've seen the very real consequences of this firsthand. I remember a patient of mine, Linda, a wonderful 68-year-old grandmother who was the heart of her family. She was the kind of woman who always had a warm meal ready for her grandkids when they visited. She did what so many sensible, busy people do. She'd cook a large pot of rice on Sunday to save time and have it ready for meals throughout the week. She'd leave the pot on the stove to cool for a few hours before putting it in a container in the fridge. A week after one of her big cooking days, she ended up in the hospital, weak, dehydrated, and miserable from a severe case of food poisoning. It took us a couple of days to trace the source, and when we identified her rice storing habit as the culprit, she was absolutely heartbroken. She couldn't believe that a simple tradition she learned from her own mother, something she did out of love and a desire for efficiency, had betrayed her and made her so ill. But Linda's story, like Arthur's, is a powerful lesson that provides us with a simple, life-changing solution. You can absolutely enjoy leftover rice safely. It just requires a small shift in your routine. Here's how you can handle it without any worry at all. First, cool it down, and cool it down fast. The goal is to get it through that danger zone as quickly as possible. Don't just leave the big, hot pot on the stove. The most effective method is to spread the cooked rice out in a thin layer on a baking sheet or in a few wide, shallow containers. This increases the surface area and allows the heat to escape rapidly, ideally cooling it down within 1 hour. Second, follow the 2-hour rule. From the time the rice finishes cooking to the time it's in your refrigerator, no more than 2 hours should pass. This minimizes the window of opportunity for those spores to become a problem. And third, use the 48-hour rule. Once refrigerated, think of cooked rice as a highly perishable item. You should plan to eat it within 2 days. If you know you won't get to it in that time frame, the freezer is the perfect solution. Portion it out into freezer-safe bags or containers, and it will keep perfectly for months. If this fact about rice was new to you, just type "wow" in the comments below. It's truly surprising how many of us were never taught this critical piece of kitchen safety. Okay, let's move on to our third item, which often finds its way into our shopping carts when we're planning a special occasion or just want a little touch of luxury. I'm talking about mold-prone soft cheeses. Think of that beautiful, creamy wheel of brie, that luscious camembert, or the sharp, tangy veins in a wedge of gorgonzola or roquefort. These cheeses are celebrated for their rich, velvety textures and complex flavors. They can elevate a simple plate of crackers into a gourmet experience. But as delightful as they are, their very nature, their softness and high moisture content, makes them one of the most hazardous foods to store in your refrigerator for an extended period, especially for us. So, let's look at why this is. From a doctor's perspective, the moist, nutrient-rich environment of a soft cheese is like a 5-star resort for microscopic organisms. It's the perfect vacation spot for bacteria and mold to check in and flourish, even in the cold. There are 2 main villains we need to be aware of here. The first is a particularly nasty bacterium called Listeria monocytogenes. What makes Listeria so dangerous is that, unlike many other bacteria that are slowed down by the cold, Listeria can survive and even multiply at typical refrigerator temperatures. For a healthy 30-year-old, a Listeria infection might just feel like a bad case of the flu. But for seniors, whose immune defenses may not be as robust, it can be far more severe, leading to serious complications like meningitis and blood infections that require hospitalization. The CDC specifically lists older adults as one of the highest risk groups for severe illness from Listeria. The second villain is mold and the invisible toxins it produces. Now, many of us grew up with the idea that if you see a spot of mold on cheese, you can just cut it off. And for hard, dense cheeses like a block of cheddar, that's generally true. But with soft cheeses, that is absolutely not the case. The way I explain it to my patients is this. Think of the mold you see on the surface as the tiny flower of a weed. The real danger lies in the roots, which you can't see. In a soft, porous cheese like brie or blue cheese, those mold roots can penetrate deep into the entire piece, spreading invisible threads throughout. These threads can produce something called mycotoxins, toxic compounds that have been linked in long-term studies to serious health issues, including liver damage. Because these mycotoxins are tasteless and odorless, you could be eating a contaminated piece of cheese without having any idea. This brings me to the story of my patient, Frank, a 74-year-old retired history professor. Frank had a real passion for a good cheese plate. It was his little evening ritual. He took great pride in finding the perfect wedge of French brie and would savor it slowly over 2 or 3 weeks, cutting off a small slice each night to have with a glass of wine. He took great pride in finding the perfect wedge of French brie and would savor it slowly over 2 or 3 weeks, cutting off a small slice each night to have with a glass of wine. He believed that as long as he kept it wrapped up in the cold, it would stay safe indefinitely, a very common and dangerous misconception. But after a particularly nasty bout of illness that left him weak, feverish, and bedridden for several days, his concerned daughter brought him to see me. As we carefully went through his recent diet, he proudly mentioned his nightly brie ritual. That's when the alarm bells went off in my head. We realized the cheese, which had been sitting open in his fridge for nearly 3 weeks, was the most likely culprit. Frank was shocked. To him, the cheese still tasted and smelled perfectly fine. He had a hard time understanding that the danger was something completely invisible, an unwelcome guest that gave no warning of its presence. Frank's experience is a powerful reminder for all of us. Enjoying these wonderful creamy cheeses is one of life's simple pleasures, and I would never tell you to give them up entirely. But we must treat them with the respect they deserve, viewing them more like a delicate, fresh pastry from a bakery rather than a long-lasting, preserved food. So, how can you enjoy these cheeses safely? It comes down to a few simple, mindful practices. First, and this is the most important rule, buy in small portions. Purchase only the amount you can realistically plan to consume within a week to 10 days of opening. Resisting the larger, seemingly more economical wedge is a crucial first step in protecting yourself. Think of it as buying freshness, not just cheese. Second, store it properly. The original plastic wrap that cheese often comes in is not ideal for long-term storage, as it can trap moisture and accelerate spoilage. The best method is to wrap the cheese tightly in wax paper or parchment paper. This allows it to breathe a little while preventing it from drying out. Then, place the wrapped cheese in a sealed container or a resealable plastic bag. Always store it in the coldest part of your refrigerator, typically the back of a lower shelf, and never in the door where the temperature fluctuates every time it's opened. Third, be a vigilant inspector. When you take the cheese out, look at it carefully. If you notice any mold growth that is not a natural part of that specific cheese, for example, a fuzzy green patch on a wheel of brie, you must discard the entire piece. I cannot stress this enough. Unlike with a hard block of cheddar, you cannot simply cut the moldy section off a soft cheese. The mold's invisible roots have likely contaminated the entire piece. This is not the time to be frugal. Your health is worth far more than the few dollars you might save. And finally, if you're concerned about the risks or simply want a less demanding cheese, consider wonderful, safer alternatives. Harder, aged cheeses like a sharp cheddar, a nutty Parmesan, or a smooth Gouda have a much lower moisture content, making them far more resistant to both mold and bacterial growth. They offer incredible flavor and a much longer, safer shelf life in your refrigerator. Alright, our fourth item is perhaps one of the biggest staples of convenience in the American kitchen. It's the foundation of a quick lunch, an easy snack, or a beautiful charcuterie board. I'm talking about nitrate-preserved cold cuts. This is your pre-sliced turkey, your bologna, your salami, or that thinly sliced ham you grab for a simple sandwich. Their ease of use is undeniable. In our busy lives, or on days when we just don't have the energy for a big meal, they can feel like a lifesaver. However, the very things that make these deli meats so convenient and long-lasting are also what can turn them into a hidden health hazard when they're stored for too long in your fridge. This is a topic that comes up frequently in my practice, and it's very similar to the issue we discussed with smoked meats, but with a few important differences. Like bacon and sausages, most pre-packaged deli meats rely on nitrates and nitrites as preservatives. These chemicals do a great job of maintaining that fresh, pink color and preventing the growth of dangerous bacteria like botulism. The problem, once again, is what happens over time after the package is opened. Through exposure to air and natural processes within the meat itself, these nitrates can convert into those harmful, carcinogenic compounds called nitrosamines. But for deli meats, there's an added layer of concern. These products are often very high in sodium, which is used for both preservation and flavor. As we age, our bodies and our kidneys become less efficient at processing excess salt, making us more susceptible to its effects on blood pressure. So, when you store an open package of deli meat for a week or two, you're not just dealing with the increasing chemical risk from nitrosamines, but you're also consuming a product high in sodium that can put extra strain on your cardiovascular system. It becomes a double-edged sword. Even if your refrigerator is set at the perfect temperature, below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, an open package of deli meat is a ticking clock. This reminds me of a conversation I had with a dear patient of mine, Eleanor, a 78-year-old widow who cherished her simple, daily rituals. One of those rituals was her lunchtime sandwich. She would buy a large 1-pound package of sliced turkey or ham because it was more economical, and she'd make it last for as long as she could. During a routine checkup, I asked about her diet, and she casually admitted that she often kept the package in her refrigerator for up to 3 or even 4 weeks. Her rule was simple. She'd wait until it started to look a little slimy or develop an off smell before throwing it out. When I explained that the real danger was invisible and odorless, and that the official recommendation from the USDA is to consume open deli meats within just 3 to 5 days, she was absolutely stunned. She had been relying on her senses to keep her safe, but in this case, her senses were failing her. She had no idea that for weeks, she could have been eating meat where the chemical composition was slowly changing, and where bacteria like listeria could also be gaining a foothold, long before any obvious signs of spoilage appeared. Eleanor's story is so important because it highlights a mistake that millions of well-intentioned people make every single day. So, let's empower you with the right knowledge to enjoy these convenient foods safely. First, buy it fresh and buy it small. Whenever possible, opt for freshly sliced meat from a reputable deli counter rather than the pre-packaged varieties. You can ask for just a quarter pound, enough for a couple of days. This way, you know it's fresh, and you're not left with a large quantity that you feel pressured to store for too long. Second, store it like a perishable. The moment you get it home, take it out of the flimsy deli bag and put it into an airtight container or a heavy-duty resealable bag. This minimizes its exposure to air. And just like with soft cheeses, store it in the coldest part of your fridge, not the door. Third, and this is non-negotiable, honor the 3 to 5 day rule. Label the container with the date you bought it. If you haven't eaten it within 5 days, you must throw it away. Your health is not worth the risk of trying to stretch it another day or two. And a wonderful alternative to consider is making your own sliced meats. A small roasted turkey breast or a lean beef roast cooked on a Sunday can provide you with delicious, fresh, and completely nitrate-free sandwich meat for the next few days. It's healthier, often tastier, and gives you complete control over the ingredients. We're covering some important information here. If you're finding this helpful, let me know by commenting "healthy" below. It encourages me to make more videos like this for our community. And now we've arrived at number 5, the one I asked you to stick around for. This one is perhaps the most surprising of all, because it involves a category of foods that we have been taught to believe are practically immortal in the refrigerator. I'm talking about pickled foods with artificial colors. Think of those vibrant, almost neon green dill pickles, the bright red pickled eggs you might see in a jar at a deli, or the colorful pickled pepper rings that brighten up a salad or a sandwich. For generations, we've relied on the magic of vinegar. We assume that its powerful acidic brine acts as a perfect preservative, creating an environment where nothing bad can happen, no matter how long the jar sits on our refrigerator shelf. And in one respect, that assumption is partially correct. The vinegar does an excellent job of inhibiting the growth of most bacteria and mold. That's why these foods don't spoil in the traditional sense. But what we fail to consider is that while the vinegar is stopping the biology, it is not stopping the chemistry. A slow, silent, and invisible chemical reaction can be taking place inside that jar over the long months it sits in the cold. Here is the crucial part that I need you to understand. Many of these commercially produced pickled products get their eye-catching hues from artificial food dyes, things like yellow 5, also known as tartrazine, or red 40. Over long periods of storage, the highly acidic environment of the pickling brine can cause these synthetic dyes to degrade and break down. Furthermore, many of these products also contain a preservative called sodium benzoate. When sodium benzoate is present in an acidic environment with ascorbic acid, which is simply vitamin C, often found naturally in peppers or other vegetables being pickled, it can react to form a new chemical compound. That compound is benzene. Benzene is not something to be taken lightly. It is a known carcinogen, recognized as such by the American Cancer Society and the International Agency for Research on Cancer. This means that a jar of pickles that you bought 6 or 8 months ago, while seemingly perfectly preserved, could have been slowly generating this harmful compound without any change in taste, smell, or texture. The vinegar keeps the pickles crunchy, but it doesn't stop this insidious chemical transformation. This is not a hypothetical risk. I saw it play out with my patient, George, an 81-year-old retired naval officer and a true pickle enthusiast. George had a particular love for those bright red pickled eggs. He'd buy a huge jar and keep it in his refrigerator for months on end, sometimes up to half a year, fishing one out whenever he wanted a tangy snack. He was a smart man, and he believed firmly in the preserving power of the brine. He told me, "Doc, these things could survive a shipwreck." He was absolutely floored when I explained to him that while the eggs themselves weren't spoiling, The combination of the red dye and preservatives in the acidic liquid could be creating a serious health hazard over that long time frame. He had absolutely no idea that this invisible chemical reaction could be happening in his favorite snack. George's story is a wake-up call. It reminds us that preserved does not always mean unchanged. But, like all the other dangers we've discussed today, this one comes with simple, empowering solutions that put you back in the driver's seat of your health. First, become a label detective. When you're at the grocery store, take an extra 30 seconds to read the ingredients. Look for brands that use natural colorings like turmeric for yellow, beet juice for red, or paprika. Actively avoid products that list artificial dyes like yellow 5, red 40, or blue 1, and be wary of preservatives like sodium benzoate. The fewer artificial ingredients, the better. Second, treat them as fresh, not forever. Once you open a jar of any pickled product, even a high-quality one, make a plan to finish it within a reasonable time frame. I recommend aiming for 2 to 4 weeks. A great habit is to write the date you opened it on the lid with a permanent marker. This simple act creates mindfulness and prevents that jar from getting lost in the back of the fridge for 6 months. And finally, the best solution of all is to make your own. Homemade pickling is incredibly easy, surprisingly fast, and allows you to have 100% control over the ingredients. A simple mixture of vinegar, water, salt, and natural spices like dill, garlic, and peppercorns can produce the most delicious and vibrant pickles without a single artificial chemical. It's a rewarding, healthier, and often much cheaper way to enjoy these tangy treats. As we come to the end of our time together, I want to bring you back to my patient, Arthur. When he first came to see me, he was feeling unwell, confused, and a little bit scared. He was worried that his health problems were the beginning of him losing his prized independence. The culprit, we discovered, that package of smoked sausage he kept in his fridge for weeks on end, was a simple habit, born out of a desire to be frugal and responsible. It was a potential tragedy that could have been caused by a simple lack of knowledge. But today, I'm happy to tell you that Arthur is thriving. He still enjoys his smoked sausages on a Saturday morning. That's a small joy he wasn't willing to give up, and I never asked him to. But now, he does it with wisdom. He buys smaller packs, and if he buys in bulk, he takes a few minutes to wrap and freeze the rest. He took back control of his health. Not by giving up what he loves, but by understanding it. That one small, simple change made all the difference in the world, giving him peace of mind and protecting his well-being. I hope that through Arthur's story, and the stories of Linda, Frank, Eleanor, and George, you've realized a powerful truth today. The message here isn't about fear. It isn't about creating a long list of forbidden foods. It's about empowerment. Your kitchen, your refrigerator, these should be places of nourishment, comfort, and joy, not sources of silent worry. Your health in these golden years isn't defined by grand, dramatic gestures. It is built, meal by meal, choice by choice, on a foundation of simple, mindful habits. With just a little bit of knowledge, you can ensure your kitchen always remains a haven. As we wrap up, we've explored 5 critical habits that can truly transform our relationship with the food we eat and the way we store it. But as your doctor, I know that knowledge is only powerful when we put it into action. So now, I have one important question for you. What is the one commitment you are making to yourself after watching this video? It could be as simple as, I will start writing the date on my packages, or I will cool my rice on a baking sheet, or even, I will check the labels on pickles for artificial dyes. Please share your personal commitment in the comments below. Reading your promises inspires me, and more importantly, it lets others in our community see that they are not alone in taking that first, crucial step. And if you found real value and inspiration in our time together today, please show your support by giving this video a like. It's a simple click that tells me this message resonated with you. To ensure you continue on this journey with us and never miss another video full of life-changing wisdom, hit that subscribe button. It's more than just subscribing. It's joining a community of people dedicated to living our best, healthiest, and most vibrant lives together. Finally, think of one person in your life, a friend, a sibling, a neighbor, who needs to hear this message today, and please share it with them. A simple share from you might just be the act of kindness that protects someone you care about. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and be well. I'll see you in the next video.